Hello, this is Joachim from Playing Piano with Chords. In this video I'm going to show you how to read piano sheet music. The video is based upon a chapter of the Playing Piano with Chords book, which comes with lots of audio and video content. You can find it at playingpianowithchords.com. Let's get started. The first thing you need to know are the names of the notes. That's easy enough because they just follow the first 7 letters of the alphabet and then repeat themselves. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then everything starts over from A again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So it's 7 notes, and on step number 8 it repeats. The music is notated on 5 horizontal lines called the staff. For the piano, you have the grand staff, which are 2 staves joined by a brace. The upper staff is usually written in the treble clef and shows you which notes to play in your right hand. The lower staff is usually written in a bass clef and shows you which notes to play with your left hand. Now let's look at the treble clef. Clef is French and means key, and it shows you the pitch of the notes that are written. If you have a close look, you might see that the treble clef is actually a stylized G. It circles around the second note from the bottom. This way you can see that the note on this line is a G in the treble clef. At first we need a point of reference. On the piano, everything starts with middle C. You may have noticed that the black keys on the piano aren't spread evenly. They come in groups of 2 and 3 keys, which repeat if you go up and down the keyboard. Now, anytime you have 2 black keys on the keyboard, just move 1 key to the left, and the white key you find there is a C. It doesn't matter if you move up or down the keyboard. Whenever you have the 2 black keys and you move 1 to the left, you have found a C. Now, middle C is the C that is closest to the middle of the keyboard. In this virtual piano, it is marked by a gray dot. You can also distinguish it by its pitch. This is the pitch of middle C. It is not lower or higher, but this one right in the middle. Middle C is so important because usually the notes going upwards from middle C are notated in the treble clef and played by the right hand, and the notes going downwards from middle C are written in the bass clef and played by the left hand. As you have seen, there is more than 1 C on the keyboard. The distance or interval between 1 C and the next C is called an octave. If you move up or down the keyboard, you will notice that there are 7 white keys until you reach the next C. Octavus means 8th in Latin. So the distance or interval between 1 C and the next C, above or below it, is 1 octave. You should keep that in mind. The same is true for any other note as well. So if you have an F, for example, and you move up 1 octave, you have reached the next F. The difference between 1 key and its octave is just the pitch. The name of the note stays the same, but it's notated differently. With middle C in place, you can now add in the other notes in the treble clef. Remember, they always proceed according to the alphabet. So after C comes D, which we will skip for now, because at first we're only going to look at the notes that are sitting on the lines of the staff. So moving up 1 more step, you get E, sitting on the first line from the bottom. The note on the next line is G, and you know that one already because it's the note that is surrounded by the treble clef. The note sitting on the next line is B, and you can remember that because it's right in the middle of the staff. Next is D, and finally F, sitting on the top line. To remember those notes on the lines, you can use the sentence, every good band draws fans. So you got E, G, B, D, F sitting on the lines in the treble clef. Now let's add the notes that are sitting between the lines. From bottom to top, you have F above the E. Next is A, then C, which is one octave higher than middle C. And the last one is E. To remember the notes between the lines, you don't need a sentence. You just need to know that they create the word face. If you add up all these notes, you can see that by now you know quite a lot already. You have E, G, B, D, F, or every good band draws fans on the lines, and F, A, C, E, or face between the lines. I'm going to show you a tune to remember those. I thought it would be nice for you to learn the notes with a little piece of music as well, so that you can memorize them even better. So here we go. You have the notes on the lines, which are E, G, B, D, and F. And if you leave out the F on top for now, you have an E minor 7 chord, consisting of these 4 notes. And if you move your whole hand up to the right one step, you get F, A, C, and E, which is an F major 7 chord. And with just these 2 chords, you can already create some nice music. Just play the F chord and then the E chord slowly. And if you like, you can use a pedal to make it sound a bit nicer. And then play them nice and smoothly. So you have the notes between the lines and the notes on the lines. Between the lines, on the lines. You can also add the F like this. So you have covered all the notes. And always visualize if you're playing the notes on the lines or between the lines, maybe even the note names. You can also arpeggiate the chords, which means playing one note after the other instead of playing them all at once. And if you add in the octaves down below as the root notes, E and F, it sounds like this. And while arpeggiating the chords, you can even name the notes if you like. This way you can learn all the notes you have learned so far with a little piece of music. There you go. Adding more notes is easy now. You just have to add them according to the alphabet. You already know the D, which sits between middle C and the E on the first line, sitting right beneath the lowest line. That's a way to remember D as well. Moving down from middle C, you can add the A and the B according to the alphabet. And I put those there because this way you just have to remember that everything starts with A and moves up from that. And even though I told you before that the notes left of middle C are usually played by the left hand and notated in the bass clef, you come across bass notes in the right hand quite often as well. So it's good to know these. If you move further upward from the F on the top, you get G, which sits right on top of the highest line. And if you look at this G and the D we had before, which sits below the lowest line, you can see kind of a symmetry here between those two notes. One sits on top, one hangs beneath. That might be a way to remember those as well. And now you just have to add up the last three notes, which are A, B, C on top. And this C is 2 octaves above middle C. And again, here you can see a symmetry between the A, B, C on top and the A, B, C on the left, on the bottom. They are just kind of in a reverse order. So the A on the bottom has 2 ledger lines, whereas on the top the C has 2 ledger lines, and the C on the bottom, middle C, has 1 ledger line, whereas on the top it's the A that has 1 ledger line. If we look for these kind of symmetries or positions of the notes, like the B right in the middle, it makes it easier to memorize the locations of the notes. That's it. Now you know more than 2 octaves of white keys in the treble clef already. Okay, so let's add the black keys. One thing you need to know first is the difference between half steps and whole steps. A half step is whenever you move from one key to the next key, left or right. Just one step. Starting on white, going to black, from black to white, from white to white, depending on where you start. If you're moving 2 steps, up or down, you have moved a whole step. And again, it doesn't matter where you start, just important that you're moving 2 half steps, which results in 1 whole step. That's it. Now, you have 2 ways of notating black keys. The first one is using sharps. And that's pretty easy. Sharps are these symbols that you see here in front of the notes that look a bit like hashtags. Whenever you see a sharp in front of a note, it tells you to move up 1 half step to the next key. So in this example, instead of playing C, you play C sharp, moving up 1 half step. And instead of G, you play G sharp, moving up 1 half step. So for the 5 black keys within each octave, there are 5 sharps to denote them. These are C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. The exact same concept also works for flats, only that this time, instead of starting from below, you start from above the black key. So a flat tells you to move down a half step. Instead of D, you play D flat, or instead of A, you play A flat. Now here's a very important thing to notice. You can see that the 2 black keys you have arrived at are the same ones as before when you used sharps coming from below. So you can arrive at the same black key either from above using flats or from below using sharps. 1 key, 2 names. So the names of the flats are D flat, E flat, G flat, A flat, and B flat for the same black keys as before. In addition to that, there are 2 special cases concerning white keys. They only appear in certain key signatures and are pretty rare, but you should know them anyway. If you move from E to F, then usually you would call them E and F. But depending on the key signature, they might have different names. In this case, if you move from E to E sharp, you have to know that the note is just the same as an F, because that's where you arrive at if you move one half step. Same if you move down from F to F flat, you have arrived at E. The same thing can happen with B and C. Even though there are two white keys, the C might be called B sharp if you come from B, and the B might be called C flat if you come from C. Again, this is only in certain key signatures, but you should know it when you see it. Now let's look at the bass clef. The bass clef is actually a stylized F. And if you look at it, you notice that it surrounds the second line from the top, which is an F note in the bass clef. That's why it's also called the F clef. In the bass clef, the notes are notated differently than in the treble clef, because it's a lower register. The note you see here on top is middle C. And instead of being below the staff, as it was in the treble clef, it's now above the staff. So it's the same note, but written differently. The notes we're going to look at now sit below middle C and are played by the left hand. Middle C in the bass clef actually looks like the high A with one ledger line in the treble clef. And this is one way to be able to read bass notes. If you know which note you would look at in the treble clef, just count down 2 whole steps and you have the right note name in the bass clef. Obviously, it's in a different octave, but the note name fits. Okay, now let's look at the notes on the lines again, as we did before in the treble clef. The notes we get from bottom to top are G, B, D, F, and A. And you can memorize them with the sentence, "Great big dogs fight animals." The notes between the lines are A, C, E, and G. And you can use the sentence, "All cows eat grass," to memorize them. Here's another little tune, this time to memorize the notes in the bass clef. We're breaking down the notes into 3 different chords. The first one outlines the notes between the lines. The other chords consist of the notes on the lines. So starting with this chord, move down 1 step with the whole hand, back to the first chord, and then move up 1 step. This way all the notes are covered. Between the lines, on the lines, but without the top one, between the lines, and on the lines, but the upper 4 notes. Now, to make it more interesting, play the bass note first and the remaining 3 notes afterwards. If you have a pedal, use a pedal, play the chords softly, and it sounds quite nice already. This way you're playing 3 chords, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, A minor 7 again, and G7. By the way, the sheet music I'm showing you here above the keyboard for this piece and first piece is not the correct sheet music. It's just a help for you to remember the names of the notes that you're playing. To get the correct sheet music, just click on the link below the video and you will get it there. You can make this tune more interesting by improvising a little melody on top. Just use the notes A, B, C, D, E, just above middle C, and play them in any order you like. They will fit over the 3 chords and sound quite nice. So just play around with this music use it to remember the notes in the bass clef. And you can also learn to improvise a bit. And together with the chords of the first video, you know 5/7 chords by now, which is also quite nice. Great! Now let's add the rest of the notes in the bass clef. The lowest note here is a C. Again, if you would look at it in the treble clef, it would be an A. Remember the A, B, C below the staff. But here in the bass clef, it's a C. Moving upwards, according to the alphabet, you get D, E, and F. And the E here looks like middle C in the treble clef. The F in the bass clef is the note that sits right below the lowest line of the staff. In the treble clef, it would have been a D. Moving upward, you have B right below middle C. And this B is the one that sits right on top of the bass clef. Moving further upward, you have D and E. And again, usually they would be played by the right hand, but it might happen as well in the left hand. Just as before in the treble clef, you arrive at the black keys in the bass clef by using either a sharp from below or a flat coming from above. Here are the 5 black keys written in the bass clef with either sharps or flats. Obviously this is only 1 octave, and if you move down, you have different notes. And just as in the treble clef, you also see E sharp or F flat, or B sharp and C flat, depending on the key signature. Just know that you're moving up or down a half step. That's it. Now you know most of the notes in the bass clef as well, and if you put everything together, you can see how many notes you know by now. Here's an overview of the notes on the keyboard with the note names and their correct notations in the treble clef and in the bass clef. You can still move further upwards or downwards on the keyboard, and doing that you would have to use additional ledger lines. You can also download this picture as a PDF file using the link below. If you like the video, make sure to check out the Playing Piano with Chords book at playingpianowithchords.com. In part 2, we're going to look at rhythm, note lengths, time signatures, key signatures, and many other musical symbols. You can also leave a little thank you in form of a PayPal donation at paypal.me/ppwchords. Thank you for watching.